Welcome to the Great Girlfriends podcast, where we discuss life, love, laughter, and everything in between. I am your host, Sybil, and I'm so excited to be here with you today. So grab your pen and paper, grab a great girlfriend, get situated, and let's get into the show.
Great girlfriends, I am so excited. Every time I get to speak with a beautiful thought leader, I just feel so inspired on my own life cycle. And I'm hoping that this conversation will do the same for you. I am being joined today by Kristan Higgins, New York Times bestselling author who has sold about 4.5 million books worldwide and is published in more than 24 languages around the world. Her two most recent novels were each selected as People Magazine's Pick of the Week. Kristan is also a co-host of the Crappy Friends podcast, which discusses the often complex dynamics of female friendships with her friend and fellow writer, Joss Day. Higgins lives in Connecticut with her family, and this new book, this recent writing, is just a beautiful, beautiful book, and I cannot wait to dive into this conversation with you, Kristan Higgins. Hi.
Thanks, Sybil. I'm so happy to be here.
It's so great to have you, and a fellow pod mama.
I think everybody has a podcast these days.
Everyone's got one, right?
I love them. I'm addicted to them. I listen to them every day, and I've subscribed to probably 30. So the more, the merrier.
Me too. And I was a listener. I've been listening for a long time, and now I'm 6 years 5 years in. 6 years into podcasting.
Wow.
So it's been a long, beautiful experience. It has brought me into circles and conversations with women such as yourself. So I love the power of connection that it offers.
Mm-hmm.
It just it brings the world closer for me.
It does. That's a really nice way of saying it.
Yeah, it brings the world closer. So, Kristan, okay, so many questions, 4.5 million books worldwide, New York Times bestselling author, your people's pick of the week. There's so many things I could say, but I would love to start with this statement about you, and you just fill this sentence in. How's that sound?
Okay, sure.
Okay, perfect. There once was a girl named Kristan.
Okay. And she never really planned on being an author. But she gave it a try, kind of on a whim. And that was 20 years ago and 21 books ago.
Wow.
Yeah. I never thought of being an author as a career. I don't think it's really something you can plan for. You can certainly plan to write, but you can't plan necessarily to earn a living as a novelist. We all know there are some great books out there that don't sell that well. And you really have to have this sort of combination of the right book at the right time, the right state of the world, all that stuff. So I was very lucky. My first manuscript was published, and I thought it would be something to do while my kids were little. But now my daughter is married and a nurse, and my son is getting his MBA, and it's just, the time has just slid past. And I realized this is my career now. This is my job.
Wow. Okay, so 20 years, 21 books. When you started out, what did you want to say and convey to people?
Well, I really wanted to write a book about regular folks like myself, people who were not particularly glamorous or breathtakingly talented or, super rich, super famous. I felt like I wanted to read books about people that I would be friends with in real life, and give them a kind of love story that would be really memorable and gorgeous and funny. So it just seemed to, I started a romantic comedy and set my books in a small town. I'm from a small town, and I live in my hometown. So that was something that I knew very well. So I thought, small town romantic comedy, what could go wrong, and it seemed to strike a nerve with readers, this kind of idea of regular people, extraordinary, funny, warm love stories. And so since then, I've kind of morphed into women's fiction, general fiction, and certainly my most recent book, Pack Up the Moon, is what I'd call general fiction.
Wow. So I love that. I love that it's inclusive of, um, real life intention, real life stories and experiences, things that make it easy for us to see ourselves in your stories and kind of locate something that is significant to our own life. I love that. I do wonder, you pick up and because you mentioned at the time, this is going to be easy. I've got children. Most of
Mhm.
the people I know that start their writing career, started with fewer obstacles and in betweens. And I hear you saying, well, I had children at the time, and now your children are in a completely different chapter of life.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
when you picked up and you started writing, how, as because you're so many moons into the journey, what was it that you wanted when you decided to become an author? What did you know what was possible for you?
Well, what I wanted was to make as much as I would make if I was a waitress part-time.
Oh, okay. I love that.
Because my husband is a firefighter, and like
Uh-huh.
most firefighters, he had two jobs at the time. And so he was working all the time, and I was home with our little kids. Um, and I thought, well, when my younger child, my son, goes to school full time, when he's 6, I'm going to have to do something. I can't let my poor husband be breaking his back out there while I'm home alone for 8 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, it's this or go back to waitressing, which I did all through college. and
Got
um,
you.
and I thought, well, maybe I could write a book. I've read books, right? I love to read. And that's one thing I think is true about all writers, is that we were readers first, and we really cherish a book as a fundamental part of our lives. A book
Mhm.
is important to self-care and mental health and escapism. And so I gave it a whack. I tried to make sure it was as good as anything I could find out there. So I read the best authors in my genre, at Beverly Jenkins and Susan Elizabeth Phillips, Robin Carr, Brenda Jackson. And I thought, if my book can stand up next to theirs, then I'll submit it. And when it was finally ready, I did. So I would say the first 10 years of my career, I felt like I wrote part-time around my children.
Mm.
Um, wrote when they were in school, wrote when they were asleep. They're both really good sleepers to this day.
Mhm. What a blessing.
Getting your children to nap is one of the fundamental things of parenthood that will make your life easier.
Oh my, it changes everything.
It really does,
Everything
right?
becomes possible when they're napping. Yeah.
It gives you time to recharge and love them again.
Yeah. Yeah, for
They're so
sure.
cute when they're asleep.
When they're
Um,
sleeping, that's right.
so then, when they went to college, it was kind of a clear road for me to write really even more, which I don't know, it didn't really happen. Writing books is a hard way to make a living. It's a wonderful way. When things go right, there's nothing like it. It really is sort of like creating a little home for your readers to go to for a few hours, and you have to build that from the foundation to the shingles.
Mhm.
So it's always a challenge to get a book written, but when I'm done, I'm so happy and so satisfied, and so proud of myself, and so eager for my readers to see what I've written. But yeah, it wasn't really a planned career path.
Wow. And so it sort of found you, but I think it's where you belong. I think you're onto something here. Something tells me, something tells
Thank you.
me
I mean, it's
God, you
really
did it.
been it's been a dream. I've been to all over America. I've been to Australia and Europe on book tours. It's crazy. Sometimes I sit and I think, 90% of my job is sitting in my pajamas with messy hair. In fact, to be honest, I am still wearing my pajama bottoms, Sybil.
Perfect. That's the
I
perfect
brought a
way to
nice
do a
shirt.
good Zoom. Yeah. I love it.
But that other 10% is really surreal when you go into a library and there's 100 people waiting for you, or when people cry because they met you, or send you an email in the middle of the night because they just had to talk about your book. It's incredible. It's humbling. It's empowering. It's joyful. So I feel really lucky and really, really blessed, which is not a word I use casually.
Yeah, I love that. So Pack Up the Moon, the most recent read. Let's talk about it.
Well, this is, I think, certainly my most ambitious book,
Mhm.
and I think my most important book, in that it is literally a story of life and death and what lies in between and what lies after. It's the story of Joshua and Lauren Park, this happily married couple who, about a year after their wedding, discover that Lauren has a terminal disease
Mhm.
and that her life expectation has been cut down to about 5 years. And so what do you do with a diagnosis like that? Of course, you go through all sorts of magical thinking and denial and that kind of thing. But at some point you have to settle in and think, what am I going to do for the rest of my short life? How do
Mhm.
I want to be? And what can I do to take care of the people around me who are going to lose me? So what Lauren does is she writes her husband a letter each month, a letter for each month in the year of his widowhood, the first year of his widowhood. So while she's alive, she thinks about how this is going to affect Josh and what she can do to help him. He's this wonderful, complicated guy. He's a very high functioning, on the autism spectrum. He's kind of this loner, a super genius in biomedical engineering. And he works by himself, and he has like 4 people that he's close to. And that's enough for him until he meets Lauren. And then his world kind of explodes. It's like when Dorothy opens the door in Oz, and life is in color.
Mhm.
He has in-laws. He has this very vivacious, outgoing wife who adores him, and he thinks, wow, I never thought life could be this happy. I never thought I'd meet anybody like this. And then she gets this diagnosis. So
Mhm.
the book actually starts off with Lauren dying, because, well, her funeral, because I didn't want to surprise readers that, halfway through the book she dies. I wanted to get that out of the way. So Joshua's story is told from his point of view, going from her funeral through that first year, 15 months of being alone. And Lauren's story is told in reverse. So her story kind of goes backwards in time from, a week or so before she gets very sick and eventually dies, to all the way back to the day that she meets Joshua and she thinks, this guy is the one. So it was a real joy to write that way. It was very different for me, telling a story in reverse. And of course, the challenge in this book is balancing the light and the dark. So it's a very funny book. And it's also a very sad book. I really hope that someone who reads this will sob at a certain point, because as a reader, I love when a book affects me so much that I gasp or I cry or I laugh out loud. So that's always something I've tried to do in my writing, is to balance the laughter and the tears. And
Mhm. Mhm.
so, Josh has his struggles cut out for him, tackling some of these tasks that Lauren has given him to do, sometimes reluctantly. But she kind of walks with him during that first year, guiding him, giving him new things to do, and kind of forcing him out into the world to meet new people. And I don't want to spoil the ending, but let's just say she knows him very well, and she takes good care of him.
Mm.
And I wanted to write this book because loss is something that everyone will experience.
That's right.
I mean, we've all lost someone very close to us, very dear to us. And, it's always a shock, no matter how ready the person might be, or how definitive a diagnosis, or how old they might be, how sick. It's still so final.
That's right.
And, and so I wanted to almost write a manual in some respects of, this is how you do it. This is how you get through it. I'm not a widow, knock on wood.
Right.
But my father died very suddenly when I was young, and my mom was in her mid 40s when my father died.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw how that shaped her, sometimes for the worse, and in some ways for the better. And I've written that into the story, where Lauren also loses her father young, and it kind of gives her a little glimpse into how to live life when you don't know how you will end or when you will end. So I love exploring all the emotions of love. I always write love stories. They're not always like romantic comedies, but they're all love stories, even when they're about sisters or parents. And there's usually a romance in there, but love is so big and so complicated. And the flip side of love is grief. You can't grieve someone you didn't really love. So this is a book about a happy marriage, about putting your loved one first, and living a life that you can be proud of and that they would be proud of.
Hmm. And that is truly what life is about. Like we can't enjoy the highs if we don't know what lows are. We don't really
Mm-hmm.
understand. And so the balance of it is being able to go through the healing processes and learn what's meant to be learned, and leave the things behind that are not of service. But
Mm-hmm.
that healing is a real journey. And I know, with you having a husband that's a firefighter, and I know that you lost your father very early. I know there's some parallels in some of like the war in your heart that you might feel sometimes as he goes out to work, and sort
Oh
of
yeah.
the gratitude you feel when he comes home. You
Yeah.
don't know that unless you're afraid of him never coming home. And, like fully understanding that life is so precious, and we have to really experience gratitude and experience, see the joy we can while we can, when we can.
Right. And we were talking before we started this recording about, the hits seem to keep on coming for our
Hmm.
nation, whether it's,
Hmm.
COVID or weather or school shootings or, you know, ugly politics. It's hard to detach when we can find all that distress on our phones every time we pull them out.
Yeah.
um, it's hard to kind of separate yourself. But I also think it's really important not to let the time slide by with you constantly worried or obsessed or, dismayed over things that you can't control.
Hmm. Hmm.
There's this saying that I love, when you feel helpless, help someone, and I think that's a way to get through the really difficult times, because if you just focus on all the things that are wrong, you're going to go crazy. I mean,
Absolutely.
a lot of us have this year.
Yeah, yeah, because
you
there's a
know
lot of wrongs, and it's
yeah.
easy to get caught up in the woe is me, life is hard, life is tough, until you've, had to say a goodbye or two, and then you realize that life is precious, life is beautiful, and it's such a gift. And how blessed are we to experience deep passion and thrill and emotion in loving someone in our lifetime?
Right, right. And one thing I really tried in this book was not to romanticize Lauren's illness and say, like, wow, it made her such a better person and heaven has another angel and that kind of thing. Those kind of sentiments, I think are a little surface. And so I wanted to make sure that, she did indulge in self-pity, and she did, get angry and dismayed over her her diagnosis and the things that she would not be able to do, but that she does come around and say, all right, got to leave my mark on the world. I'm not going to be here as long as I thought. So what has my father's death taught me? What has, always living in the shadow of my beloved big sister taught me? How can I show how lucky I feel to be married to Josh? And Josh too, he's a little less equipped, I think, maybe because of his small circle of friends, because he's not great at reading social cues. He's a little lonelier. And it's one of the rules of writing a novel is you make it as hard as possible for the main character to get through the book. You don't want someone who's just going to cruise through this with grace and dignity and acceptance right away. You want them to fight for that. And so, giving him a job where he works by himself, giving him some social anxiety and some triggers and stuff like that, it made it, I think, more interesting and very human, to see a guy who's struggling. And even his wife sending him letters each month. Sometimes he hates the job she's going to give him.
Yeah.
But he loves her. He has faith in her. And it's a way to feel connected with her, even though she's gone now. So it is quite a journey for Josh. And I say this is a tragic love story with a happy ending. And again, like we all have that. We all have a tragic love story with a happy ending. We lose a child, we lose a sibling, a parent, a best friend. That's part of being human, is loss.
Right. That's right. That's right. I love that. I love that. Okay. So last question for me, what haven't you said in a book that you feel needs to be said? What's left for you to share as a writer that hasn't been voiced?
I love that question. And I've never been asked it. So well done. I think that the book that I am just finishing now, I'm just about to pass into my editor. It's about anger. I have a reputation of being a very nice, sweet person in the writing community, and I hope that I am. But women's anger is something that I wanted to explore, just in sort of the role of mother, the role of wife, daughter, and female rage is something most people are really uncomfortable with. And yet you look around at your friends and you see the husband is cheating on them, or their parent is still torturing them, even though they're 40 years old, or, your sister can always make you feel 1 inch tall. So I wanted to write about sort of these particularly female feelings. And so this is a story of 2 sisters, and one of them is left very abruptly by her husband for a younger woman, the whole midlife crisis cliche of the white American male. And she's furious, she's not heartbroken. She's furious that she has done all this work to create this life and family, and he can just walk away. So she gets a little unhinged. And again, it's a book that's funny and sad and angry, but kind of in a cathartic way. So
there's even healing there in
exactly
anger and allowing it, when everyone expects you to be so kind and expects you to be a lady, and that's part of it. In order for me to be kind, I need to have these moments of rage where kindness can prevail at some point, but rage, ensues for the moment. Yeah.
And again, it's part of the human experience, and you can't talk yourself out of it. And there are times when it's really appropriate to be furious. So
Oh, I love that. Well, I'm looking forward to reading and hearing more about this one that's coming up. And Pack Up the Moon is a really tender read. I had a chance to preview the book, and I just found myself quilted up and just kind of woven into the storyline. And honestly, it made me imagine things about my own life. Like, what if this were to happen? How, and my preparedness emotionally, and even, things that I would want said, and ways that I want my love to be displayed, until the end. And so it gave me a different perspective on things that I assume I will have rights to. I assume my right to life, and enjoy with my husband and privilege with my kids for as long as possible, not even really fully recognizing that at any given moment, our story can be rewritten. And I have to say the book allowed me to acknowledge that and then kind of redefine what I wanted to prioritize. So new things have become important to me as a result of reading and becoming inside of the book. So I really love books where I become the character, and it forces me to look at my own life and ask big questions. So I appreciate
thank
that.
you. I can't ask for more from a reader. Thank you so much, Sybil.
For sure. When and where can they find the book, and where can everyone purchase and send you notes of and DM you and all the special things?
Sure. My website is KristanHiggins.com, and all the buy links for the books are there from whichever bookstore or vendor you choose. And all my social media can be found there as well if you want to hang out with me online.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Kristan, for your time today. Great girlfriends, be sure to go out and pack up the moon. One for yourself. I always tell our listeners to get 3. You get one for yourself, you get one for one of your great girlfriends. And then when you lose or leave the one at the beach, you have your backup copy at your house. So
that sounds good. Sounds like a plan.
Yeah. So
thank you so much, Sybil.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you today.
Great girlfriends, did you enjoy this week's episode of the podcast? If so, would you please give us your amazing review on iTunes? Every single review helps another great girlfriend get plugged into the podcast, into the community. Speaking of community, make sure you join our Facebook group, The Great Girlfriends. You follow us on Instagram at The Great Girlfriends and on Twitter at @the_great_GFS. Last but not least, we'd like to thank my amazing husband, Kwaku, Sam and Dilly, and all of you for being a part of the global community that makes us so strong. Please remember to share with your friends. Keep listening and keep being a great girlfriend. I'm Sybil Amuti, and I'm out. Peace.